Hello, and welcome to Animation Triad. Today, we're trying something different. The rest of Animation Triad and myself have decided to give you a top 10 list. And what is the top 10 we're talking about?
Well, our favorite horror films or horror, scary, Halloween adjacent type.
Basically, stuff that scared us in some way or another. We're going to talk about this because Halloween's right around the corner.
It's Halloween. Note the decorations, please.
Spooky. So we're going to kick off this top 10 list, each of us giving our own top 10 favorites in no particular order. So, to kick things off, we're going to start with Lish.
So let's start actually with some of my more unconventional horror / Halloween favorites. I love musicals, so my very favorite gruesome musical is without a doubt Repo, the Genetic Opera.
Repo Man.
It is a musical, but it is also surprisingly gory. It has so many wonderful people. Anthony Stewart Head, Sarah Brightman, so many wonderful people. It's musical, it's gory, yes, all the things. And another one that I really like, it is another musical. I feel like it kind of fits the horror genre, but more in a tongue-in-cheek sort of way, is Little Shop of Horrors.
Little shop of horrors, little shop of terror, little shop of horrors, no.
And the reason I love this one is because it's so campy. It's this plant from outer space that is trying to take over the world, and depending on the version you see, whether the plant actually succeeds or not. So I thought that was kind of fun, kind of quirky. The songs are great. I love that it's acted by a bunch of SNL alumni. And the next one that I like is The Uninvited. Now, I hear that there is a Korean version of this, but I am more familiar with the American version, and the reason I love this is spooky to me because it's about a young woman who is basically learning that she can't trust anything around her and ultimately can't trust her own mind. If you can't trust your own mind, that is terrifying to me. Another campy one that I love is Shaun of the Dead. Now, this one is not scary to me at all. Yes, it has zombies, so in my opinion, it still fits with the horror and Halloween genre, but it is just silly fun. It has Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. It's a great time if you like zombie movies and you like to laugh. This is the one for you. As you might have guessed, I'm not big on actually being afraid of most things in the horror genre, so one of my next favorites is Cabin in the Woods. I really like Cabin in the Woods because, well, first of all, shout out to Joss Whedon. He's kind of a genius in everything he does, and I just love that unconventional ending. I don't want to give it away because I want you to watch the movie. I want you to see the tropes that play out, the way that they address these tropes, like the virgin, the quirky guy, them getting together, all of these different things. But then he has a really fun take on the ending that is surprisingly deep, despite the otherwise tongue-in-cheek nature of the film. So definitely check that one out if you haven't already, or if you have seen it, please comment down below. Let me know what you thought of that. Oh my god. This one is not a movie, but it is one that I really love. It is The Walking Dead. That would be the original Walking Dead, not the new Fear the Walking Dead. Some people really like it. Fear the Walking Dead is good only because of Coleman Domingo, but it's not where my heart lives. I like the original Walking Dead. I like that it can be scary, poignant, sometimes funny, definitely gory, and they work really, really hard on those special effects. Now, sometimes I feel like you can tell when the special effects are a little too special, but most of the time I feel that they are amazing with every single thing that they're doing, and I can't wait to see what they do next. This one is one actually that we've already reviewed. And this one was actually kind of my choice to review, so it's really no surprise that this one makes my top 10. It is Attack on Titan. And in case you didn't watch that review, by the way, you should watch that review. Go watch that review after you finish watching this, because you need to see it. You need to know why I love it, why I assume my co-hosts love it, but it is so affecting. It is psychologically gripping. It is physically sometimes going to make you go, what the? And it'll give you the feels. So it kind of takes you on a journey, and you really want to see the whole thing. Another one that we've already reviewed that is a personal favorite of mine is Death Note. I'm not going to say a thing about the movie, but I do love the anime, and the reason why I love it is not because it's scary in a conventional sense, but because it really makes you think. If somebody has all of this power, what are they going to do with it? How is that going to change them as a person? Not to mention, I love the cat and mouse between the major protagonist and the major antagonist. Light and L, they are my people, and I love watching what they're going to do next. The ending was really interesting. This is one of my favorites. If you like thrillers, definitely check this one out. Here's an oldie but a goodie. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now this one, I actually do like the old one from the 60s. I know that's gonna sound a little strange, you know, everything has been remade. They probably remade this one, but I like the original. I love the way that it ends. The entire build-up of him just watching how people change, and then ultimately, what's gonna happen to him? Nobody knows, because that's when the movie ends. Oh, it's so great, and you never know, like, how they could even get rid of people doing this. They just know that it's happening to them. They don't know how to change it. They don't know how to fix it, but it is changing their entire world. And that is so freaking terrifying, but so exciting if all you're doing is watching and you don't have to worry about it happening to you. Another one I really enjoyed was Silence of the Lambs. Now, this one is in my top 10, but I would not rank it in my top 5, despite me putting it in this ordering right here, being so close to the last one that I talk about. However, I do like it because you kind of get to know this investigator, Clarice, and you get to see where she's coming from and how she's kind of strangely bonding with this really, really horrible killer. You're wondering, why are they bonding? And yet they have to bond in some way for her to try to catch this other killer, who, by the way, does legitimately terrify me. The other stuff is psychologically thrilling for me, and I love looking at why people do what they do, but I'm genuinely creeped out by the killer she's trying to catch. Not because of him killing people, it's that he will actually stick them in a pit and like try to change their bodies so he can get more use out of them. I'm pretty sure you've probably seen Silence of the Lambs. It is a classic, but if you haven't, I don't want to give too much away. That is terrifying. Not that somebody would just kill you and use your body, but that they would try to alter your body before killing and using it. That is terrifying because it just prolongs everything. And last, but certainly not least, this is absolutely terrifying. This freaked me the frick out. VeggieTales.
Do you like to talk to tomatoes?
What? That's not a horror movie? That's not how... It's talking vegetables! Of course it's freaking scary. How are you not freaked out by that? It's talking vegetables. Okay. Alright, I think we're done here.
Alright, this is Teddy D's Top 10.
I'm going to do the classic countdown. So I'm going to start with my number 10, John Carpenter's Body Bags. Body Bags is interesting. It's an anthology horror film. The storyteller is the coroner of a morgue, played by John Carpenter himself, and he finds bodies in the morgue in body bags, thus the title, where he discusses how they died. Very interesting. It was really good storytelling. It didn't really scare me because there's not a lot of horror movies that scare me these days. I like a good story. Moving on to number 9, An American Werewolf in London.
I see the bad moon rising. I see trouble on the way.
Now, what I liked about American Werewolf in London, again, it did not scare me, but really good story. Probably one of the best werewolf effects I've ever seen. And I like that it's more practical effects over digital effects. Love that movie. Number 8, The Sixth Sense.
You know the accident up there?
Yeah.
Someone got hurt.
They did?
A lady. She broke her neck.
Oh my god, but you can see her?
Yes,
Where is she?
standing next to my window.
This was back when M. Night Shyamalan did the twist very well. But joking aside, I really, really loved the twist at the end. Again, very good story. It was this kid seeing dead people, and they were creepy. It gave me the spine tinglies. And it was very inspiring. You know, it's inspired some of my own stories that I'm working on. So, very well written story. Moving on to number 7, Nightmare on Elm Street.
From Wes Craven, a new masterpiece in fantasy terror. Nightmare on Elm Street.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Now this one actually scared me, even though I said there's not a lot of horror movies that scare me. But the scariest aspect of it is something that can get you in your dreams, that can control your dream world, that can basically take all the power away from you in your most vulnerable state, which is slumber. Well, for me, if I've had too much Taco Bell and I'm in the bathroom, but that's a horror story on its own. You've probably heard of the film. The main monster is Mr. Freddy Krueger. He's got the razor hand glove thing, and he haunts your dreams, both literally and in the movie. So I really loved it because, like I said, it actually scared me. And I'm talking about not the remake. Remakes are wrong. Moving on to number 6, Blair Witch Project.
I'm so scared.
Again, it was creepy the first time I saw it. I really liked how they did it. It's like they basically had a shoestring budget. They improv'd most of it. It was a really creative and interesting way to do a film. I know a lot of people is like, oh, I knew it was fake the whole time. It's like, it's not that I don't believe you, it's just that you're lying. So, still, I really love it conceptually. So I have a lot of respect for that. Moving on to number 5, the 90s miniseries It. I think it's very hard to out-creepy Tim Curry as a clown, again, my personal opinion. I really liked the story. I saw it when I was pretty young, and that miniseries had me afraid of clowns for a year. So it was pretty effective. I kind of caught it late one night. I thought it was going to be a fun little movie where because a kid meets a clown in the very beginning. And I'm like, oh, he's got an imaginary clown friend. And then it grew teeth and kind of downhill from there. Number 4, The Shining.
Here's Johnny!
Fun fact, Stephen King does not like The Shining, Kubrick's version. I don't want to get too much into that, but I kind of have to go with Stanley on this one. The way he did it was more psychological, and I thought that was much creepier than what the book had. And it's hard to out creepy Jack Nicholson. I mean, Tim Curry as a clown was pretty creepy, but Jack Nicholson, you don't want to see him just right behind you out of nowhere. That would keep me up at night. Moving on to number 3. This is very oddly specific. The Doctor Who episodes featuring the Weeping Angels.
Don't blink. Don't even blink. Blink and you're dead. They are fast, faster than you could believe. Don't turn your back. Don't look away, and don't blink.
Those things are creepy AF. Basically, if you don't know what they are, if you haven't watched the show, they are these angel statues that whenever you're not looking at them, they start moving. They get closer, and they'll stop, and they'll be like, rah, with claws and teeth. It's kind of weird how they take you out, because they send you back in time and then feed on the potential energy that you create, on the future that you might have had. They make you live to death. But it is creepy to be like, oh, that thing wasn't there before, and now it is. Highly recommend it. Moving on to number 2. I love this series. It is Tales from the Crypt.
From the crypt.
It is considered horror comedy because some of the episodes are so gory it's ridiculous and silly, and it makes fun of itself. And I always respect anything that makes fun of itself. I'm very meta like that. The whole Tales from the Crypt series has a very interesting history. Again, I didn't find it scary, but it is a fun experience. And they had really good stories. I love anthologies, so highly recommend it. And finally, number 1, Creepshow. Creepshow is an anthology movie. It was a collaboration of Stephen King and Romero, where it was a few of, I think, Stephen King stories and then some other stories. They were all very interesting stories. Again, horror comedy, a lot of campiness, but also creepy. Super fun experience. You get to see Stephen King's first acting gig. He plays one of the characters. It's probably my favorite story in the whole movie. And it's just a very entertaining watch. That's my top 10.
Alright, we've reached the end. And now, it's time for my top 10. So let's start off with something amusing. Number 10, we have Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I love this movie. The practical effects for it are phenomenal. The makeup in it is just amazing. That is the stuff of nightmares right there. That really is. I mean, yes, it's been done to death nowadays with killer clowns. I mean, we've got it, we've got people running around dressed as that, but this is taking it to an absurd level and just having fun with it. And it has an awesome soundtrack, which is just so much fun to have playing in the background. So definitely check that one out. Number 9, we have a horror anthology called Trick or Treat. Now this is one of my all-time favorite horror anthologies ever. It is so expertly done, and it's just tales from one night on Halloween. And you follow a bunch of different characters, but the trick is finding out which order it goes in, because none of them are set chronologically. So you'll see characters popping in and out from other scenes, and you're trying to figure out how they go together. And it's just beautifully done, and this is a film that is just, I'm gonna straight up say, it's Halloween porn is what it is, basically. This is just what you wish Halloween was like in your town, minus all the murder. It is just a feast for the eyes. It's so colorful, and it just reminds me of Halloween's past, and I love it to death. Alright then, with number 8, we're moving into something a little spooky. We're moving in to Candyman. Based on the short story by Clive Barker, Candyman is unnerving. It has some legitimately scary moments. Overall, it's this atmosphere that it takes is just so oppressing and just uncomfortable at times. This is an ordeal of a film to get through at moments. The scary thing about it is some of the stuff they talk about is actually based on actual murders. That was some of the disturbing parts. And the fact that the titular Candyman has bees coming out of his mouth. Those were live bees. But other than that, this film is just beautifully done and is unnerving as all heck. The soundtrack by Philip Glass just adds to it. It is horror movie music done at its best, in my opinion. Well, almost at its best. As we lead into our next film we'll be talking about. My number 7 would be Suspiria. Now this is an Italian horror film. It is about a young ballet dancer going to a German ballet school. Everything about this film is just beautiful to look at. It really is. The buildings, everything about it is just fantastic to watch. The two things that really stand out to me is 1, the soundtrack by the Goblins. They've worked a lot with the director of the film, whose name, unfortunately, I do not recall off the top of my head. And it is such a good soundtrack. I own it myself. It's just so good. I just listen to it occasionally. Another thing which I think this film does better than a lot of films is atmosphere. Because what it does is it uses colors that are unconventional. It is basically shot in Technicolor. It is just a feast for the eyes with all the greens, the yellows, the reds, the purples, everything. This is a film which realizes you don't need everything to be dark and cast in shadows. This brings the horror out front and makes it a piece of art. It shows you the terror that is done with good lighting and just color work. And I don't know too many films that can say that. And it's also part of a trilogy called the Three Mothers. The first one is Suspiria, the second one is Inferno, another excellent film I would recommend, and the third one is The Mother of Tears, my number 6, The Babadook. An Australian horror film. The first one by its director, actually. I believe she also wrote it. This is a story of a single mother trying to raise a son on her own, and battling with, well, let's just put it, some really personal demons. It is an unnerving film. And the creature they've created for this, I think, is one of the most memorable horror movie monsters, in quotes I will say, in recent memory. It's simple, effective, and I'm just going to say this, I want the pop-up book it comes from. I know they made like 100 actual copies of this. I want that so bad. It's an evil pop-up book. It should be stupid. It sounds like it would be stupid, but it is so effective. And the story, when you break it down to a personal level, is just a single mother's struggle. And it is brilliantly done, and I cannot stress that enough. For my number 5, I would have to go with Hellraiser. I enjoy this film. I think it has some very good atmosphere, very creative, I will say that, and another iconic horror movie monster, Pinhead. I like that Pinhead is not so much straight up evil in the first couple movies. He's not so much evil as he is just, you broke a rule, you opened up the portal, I'm gonna come get you, basically. And he can be reasoned with, more so in the short story, which it is based off of, which was called The Hellbound Heart. Studios would not let them use that because they thought it would sound too much like a romantic movie or something and no one would go see it. Oddly enough, one of the people working on the film suggested, well, we can't use that, how about what a woman will do to get a good fuck? Which is true in this film. The effects are amazing, and it still has one of my all-time favorite special effects with one of the characters basically regrowing his body. And how they did that is fantastic. This had a shoestring budget, but they made it work amazingly. Now, moving on to number 4, Let the Right One In. Now, this is a Swedish horror film that is very disturbing on many levels. It is a vampire story, but on a deeper level, it is a story of an outsider. A young kid, alienated and driven from humanity into the arms of this creature. And in a way, it is also a love story in a very twisted way. It is based off of a book by the same name, and it has been remade into an American remake called Let Me In. I do love the original movie. The film is fantastic, very unnerving, sweet at the same time in its own way. It's a very interesting film that when you think back about it, it could be sweet, but at the same time, it could be really messed up. And that's what I like about it. It makes you think on many levels about what each thing means in it. For my number 3, I would have to say Funny Games. There's 2 versions of this film, I should say. There is the original film, which I believe was German, possibly. I'm not 100% sure. I do apologize. I should have researched this more. The director who did the film remade it in the mid-2000s and did a shot-for-shot remake of it with American cast. This is not a film you will feel good after. This is a film that dissects what it means to watch horror in a way. The 2 villains are just young men terrorizing a yuppie family. It does not pull punches. This is a film that will make you feel drained. And this director specializes in films that make you question things. And it also invites you to ask the question of, as we as horror film viewers, are we responsible for what is happening on the screen as well, in its own way? It is a very interesting film. I would highly recommend it. Moving on to number 2, we have It Follows. This is a film that, in my opinion, came out of nowhere. It really did. I barely heard anything about this when it came out. I heard maybe just an inkling that it was a really stupid premise. And if you go in with that, yeah, it does seem like a stupid premise. Sex demon, basically. You pass it on. Some people have said it's an allegory for sexual diseases, but I see it as something else, and I'll get to that in a moment. This is a film I absolutely love, for many reasons, because it is just so unnerving. It legitimately scared me. I had nightmares. I do not have nightmares from scary movies. This legitimately unnerved me in just a masterful way. The camera angles, the wide lenses they used, everything, the way it was set, the music, the underscoring, the foreshadowing was just fantastic. But I think what really made it creep me out was the fact that it's shot in my hometown of Detroit. These are places I have grown up going to or driving around in. I drive through those streets almost every day, and seeing something stalking people, slowly but surely, never stopping, always following you, just behind you at any moment, that is terrifying. Now, as I said, people think that it might be an allegory for sexual disease or something. I see it as something else. I see it as an allegory for growing up. The creature basically represents inevitability. You only get it when you have sex, which, for some people, they see it as a sign of growing up. A rite of passage, if you will, of going into adulthood. Depending on your preference on that, I guess. Here's the thing. It only gets you after that, and then it follows you forever, and it does not stop. The only way to protect yourself is to basically be with someone who also is potentially being hunted by it, and you can both keep an eye out for it. It's a very interesting look because, as I said, it's inevitability. It's the fact that no matter what you do, you are going to die. It's old age. It is something that none of us can fight. They don't explain the creature. You don't need to. It's just there. Always in the background. Even when you're not looking for it, it is there. And it is, by far, one of the creepiest movies I have ever seen. I honestly don't want them to do a sequel. I want this just to be left alone. Let it be the masterpiece that it is. And I honestly think it is one of the best horror films to come out in God knows how long. Here we are, the last film on the list. Now this film holds a special place in my heart. I saw it when it first aired on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it left a very strong impact on me. It's not that this film is scary, it's the fact that it is that frickin' awesome. The film in question, Dog Soldiers. I love this movie, and I can give you just 4 words that make it awesome. English Marines versus werewolves. It is fantastic. This film has basically no budget, but the creature designs for the werewolves are awesome, and they don't look like many werewolves you see. They are huge, tall creatures that raise up on their hind legs and walk like a man, but have this huge wolf head. It is perfect. They utilize the fact that the less you see is scarier, which is something you don't get in a lot of horror films. The less you know or the less you see of something, the scarier it is. I've heard people compare this film to Jaws in terms of how they utilize the monsters, and that is a perfect analogy. It is basically werewolves in a house in the middle of nowhere, and it's a bunch of Marines trying to fend them off. It is phenomenal. And I don't want to go into too many spoilers. There is one scene in particular where a Marine gets cornered, and he's got a werewolf busting through the door, and it finally breaks through, and he's psyching himself up, waiting for it to come in. He takes a pot off the stove and just throws boiling water on it, and then starts bashing it with the pot, and starts punching it and stabbing it with anything he can find. He just starts throwing everything at it because he knows he's screwed, and he's going at it. The werewolf comes in. He starts boxing the werewolf, punching it in the face. He gives it an uppercut that knocks out one of its teeth, and he flips it with like a judo flip onto the table, grabs a kitchen knife, and starts going to town on the creature's chest. And he's just screaming bloody murder as he is stabbing this thing. And I gotta spoil this because it's just too awesome. Another werewolf pops in through the other door and pushes him up against the table and is holding him, about to rip him to shreds. And he looks at it and he goes, "I hope I give you the shits." And then he gets eaten. But it is just awesome. It just gets you so pumped. This is a film which you will just feel like, yeah! It's scary, it's funny, well written. It's a great little treasure of a film if you can find it. And that's my top 10. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you guys have a awesome Halloween. Animation Triad, I'm Stu, and thank you for watching, Initiates. Bye-bye.
Happy haunts materialize and begin to vocalize. Grim grinning ghosts come out to socialize.